What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're gonna switch it up a little bit. Recently on the channel we've been talking about a lot of things Nintendo, but today I want to talk about the PlayStation 5 because I recently became an adopter of the PlayStation 5 ecosystem. I got one in July after some less than exciting Microsoft layoffs and just news in general got dropped. And in that video detailing why I decided to switch from Xbox to PlayStation 5, well, more so why I decided to leave Xbox. I tried to keep the PlayStation part out of it because, you know, if you compare these consoles, it gets into console war territory, and I think that's absolute bullshit, so I don't want to concern myself with any of that. But someone in the comments of that video said, why don't you do a video talking about how you feel about the PlayStation 5 as a new adopter, someone who is new to the PlayStation ecosystem in general? And I said, that's a terrific idea for a video, especially at this time of year for the channel when there's a lot of Mario stuff that we're talking about. It is the 40th anniversary after all, but there's going to be a lot of Mario videos coming. I'm sorry if you're not a big Mario fan, but there's just so many games to talk about in the franchise, and I wanted to break it up with something like this that doesn't even involve Nintendo whatsoever. And I think it is a good time to make a video like this about whether or not the PS5 is worth it in 2025, or how good is the PS5 in 2025, 5 years after its release. Because not only is this November the 5th anniversary for the PS5, which is a pretty big milestone, but another big milestone is coming for this generation of consoles, not the PS5 exclusively, in just a few months. And that is, of course, the release of GTA 6, a game that is going to move Xbox Series' and PlayStation 5's unlike any game has moved them this generation. So there's going to be a lot of people in a few months, or even this holiday season, who are looking around saying, well, I need a next-gen console to play what is going to be one of the biggest games of all time. So am I going to get a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series? And in particular, is the PS5 worth it? Should I be picking up a PS5 over an Xbox Series to play GTA 6? I know that they're marketing it as a PlayStation 5 game, but it's going to run on Series X just fine, and honestly, it might run on Series X even a little bit better than it does on PS5, considering that the PS5 is a little bit weaker, I believe, than the Series X. Obviously, the PS5 Pro is stronger than anything else on the market in terms of consoles. So that is what I'm here to answer today. Is the PS5 in 2025 worth it? And how do I feel about it? Am I satisfied with my switch from Xbox to PlayStation, just a few months removed from that decision to switch consoles? We're going to talk about all of that today, and at the end I'll give you my final verdict on how I feel about the PS5 5 years after it came out. So I want to say before we get into it, by no means is this going to be a comprehensive review. I'm not a big tech guy. I had my Xbox to play third-party games. I have my PS5 to play third-party games. Like, I'm not really deep into the discourse like I am with Nintendo, so there might be some specific details that you want to know that might not get covered in this video, but I think it makes more sense to offer up a more casual opinion of the system anyway. And if you have any questions that I don't cover in this video, please leave them in the comments and I'll answer them to my best ability. So let's first start with the console itself, the hardware, and my thoughts on it. In terms of power, I can't really tell you much because, again, I'm not a huge tech guy. It runs all the third-party games I'm interested in well. Obviously, there are some controversies with Unreal Engine 5 games not really running well at all, but especially not on the PlayStation. But I don't really play a lot of Unreal Engine 5 games, apparently, because all of the games I've played run well. And I'm sure when a game like Resident Evil Requiem comes out in February, it will run just fine on my system as well, because I will be playing it on the PlayStation 5. Obviously, in some games, notably GTA 6, you will be capped at 30 frames per second, but as much as I am a frame rate snob, like, I want my games running at 60, if you give me a consistent 30, I am fine with it. You know, the game and the art style and the gameplay is what matters most to me. I do want 60 frames per second if possible, but like a game like GTA 6, I'm not just gonna not play it because it's at 30 frames per second, right? And of course, first-party Sony games run like a charm on this system. I played games like Astrobot. Obviously, Astrobot is a technical showcase for the PS5, but a game like Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut, which admittedly was a PS4 game that they upscaled to PS5, that looks great. Spider-Man Remastered I also played, which is again a PS4 game remastered for PS5. That game looks and runs great. I've seen people call Death Stranding 2, which is the most recent PS5 exclusive, one of the greatest looking games of all time, so I think that is praise enough for how capable this console is from a power perspective. And a game like Ghost of Yotei, which comes out in just a few weeks, looks absolutely stunning in all of the trailers we've seen for it. But realistically, if you're in the market for a PS5, I don't think the power really matters to you, right? Like, if you want a super powerful, souped-up system, you're probably going to buy a PC. If you want a console, you kind of know what comes with that. And again, the Xbox and the PS5 are not very different in terms of performance. Obviously, the Series S is much less powerful than the PS5, but the Xbox Series X and the PS5 are not that different, I don't think, in terms of power, having used both of them. Now let's talk about the DualSense. I love the DualSense. I think this is maybe the best controller I've ever used. It is a little light, a little plasticky in a way that the Switch 2 Pro controller, which I also love, is not. But it just feels really good to hold in your hands. There's something about this size and this form factor that is just really darn nice to hold and play games with. Obviously, if you're coming over from Nintendo or Microsoft like I was, there are some differences that will trip you up, most notably the dual sticks at the bottom, which Sony is now famous for using. I don't think it's that hard to get used to. I switch from my Switch 2 and my PS5 all the time, and I don't really find either one to be awkward now. I'm just kind of used to it. The one thing that does still trip me up about the PS5 controller is that there's no select button. There's a start button right here, and then there's a capture button here. The select button is the touchpad, which I think is kind of stupid. I don't know why there's not a select button on the PS5 controller, because often I will go click the capture button thinking it's a select button, and then it pulls up the camera. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to go to the menu, I want to go to the map, but it's a little bit... So that is the thing that has taken me the most time to get used to, is clicking that touchpad rather than anything else to get to a menu of some sort. And I would say a good chunk, if not most, Sony published games will have you click this right here to get to the menu or the map or something. I know Returnal does it that way, Spider-Man does it that way, I think Tsushima does it that way as well. This is obviously like a very in-the-weeds criticism or opinion. Like, if you aren't a big video game fan, you're probably thinking, what the hell is he even talking about? But it is an adjustment to get used to, for sure. I also love how much dumb tech is built into this controller. It's a really cool piece of technology. I think the most notable thing is the touchpad, trackpad thing right here in the middle. Like I said, most games just use it to open the map. They use it as a de facto select button, which I think is really disappointing, because when a game does use it in an interesting way, it is really darn cool. Obviously, the PS4 had a similar piece of technology on the DualShock. This isn't new for Sony, but I still think it's a really cool piece of tech. I think Astrobot uses the touchpad really well. In some levels, you can like fling him around and do certain things with this touchpad, and it's always very satisfying. It's very tactile, very nice to use. There is one level in Astro's Playroom where he's a ball and you have to roll him using the touchpad. I thought that was a little bit too much, a little bit too far in terms of the touchpad usage. I thought that wasn't the most fun level, but every other time when you use that touchpad in Astro, it is pretty darn intuitive. And of course, the best way that I've seen any game use this touchpad is Ghost of Tsushima, which has one of, I think, the best game mechanics ever in its guiding wind, where if you want to get to a location on the map, if you put down a marker somewhere, all you have to do is swipe up on the touchpad and the wind will show you which direction to go. That game is all about limiting UI and trying to keep you in the game as much as possible. And I think that's such a genius piece of game design. Again, one of the best mechanics in a game I've ever experienced, I think. Swiping up and having the wind tell you where to go. Obviously, it's not something every game could do. It works thematically really well with Ghost of Tsushima, but man, it is such a genius use of that touchpad. In terms of the other dumb stuff, it does have gyro controls. It has a microphone, of course, and a speaker, which I'll show you in a second. It's also got RGB lights. It's got a band of lights here, and I don't think this one on the bottom often changes. I think it's always just white or blue, but these ones on the sides will change often. In Astrobot, when you complete a level, they will start lighting up rainbow, which is really darn sick. I'm playing Uncharted right now, and for some reason they are yellow. which I've never seen a game make them yellow before, but this one does for some reason. You'll see if I go to the menu, it's no longer yellow. I thought it would change to a different color, but it didn't. And I also want to show off that speaker because I think it's really cool, but it's really stupid. So I actually have my PS5 open right now. I gotta save Uncharted before I do what I'm about to do. So I like Madden, right? I like playing the Eagles games before they happen. So I do frequent Madden a lot. And a lot of games do use the speaker. Returnal is one that uses it a lot. Returnal is a game that uses almost all of the gimmicks on the PlayStation's controller. You can tell it was built for the PS5. And I think Madden does it in the funniest way. So let me pull up a game and let's see if I can show you what it does. I'm going to hold it up to the mic. What the it's not doing... Maybe I have to turn on the volume. What the Why is it not doing it? Oh my god. Bro, this controller won't shut up when I play Madden normally. But now I'm playing Madden and it's not doing it. Okay. Okay, I'm going to switch to the Eagles. Maybe I have to be the Eagles. Okay, so it's not doing it. I mean, Madden got camera shy. Can you believe that? I mean, way to meet the moment, Madden. My god. I kid you not. I'm playing Madden now, like an hour or two after I recorded that video. And it just did the thing. It just did the thing that it didn't want to do earlier. Let me see if it works now. How do I... Well, I'm... Madden, if you saw. Okay, here we go. I just showed you my thing. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? You see my forehead right now. Whoa, it says he does the thing! And I got sacked. Well, he says, hold on, like in the NFL game, but it's on the controller speaker. That's crazy. Why did it not do that when I was recording? I don't know. You hear that? That is Astro's little ship getting ready to go here. You can hear him walking on sand, and then on grass, and then in the water. By the way, my controller is playing at full volume. I turned this shit all the way up. Grass again. That's rock. Okay, now I'm gonna like quick speedrun a level and see if I can make it rainbow. Well, you can hear. He's on ice. He's skating. Okay, it doesn't do it. What? I mean, my PlayStation is selling me right now. I'm trying to make an informative video, and this is what it's doing to me. Okay. While I'm doing this, I think it's worth noting that Astrobot also uses the microphone in some pretty cool ways. There are sections where you have to... It's pretty loud. Blow right into the microphone, which is pretty funny. I don't think any other game uses the microphone but Astrobot, but that's why Astrobot's so freaking goated. Look at that! Look at that! More games should do that. There should be an option to just have the controller do that all the time. I'm sure it would drain the battery life like hell, but look how cool that is. Look how cool that is. Okay, let's hit the bird and get the extra coins for no reason. So I hope you enjoyed that live demonstration. Point is, there's a lot of cool features on the PlayStation. The most useful one, though, are the adaptive and haptic triggers. And the cool thing about these is that you can push them halfway in a lot of games and they will do different things. Like in Returnal, you can push it halfway to focus in when you're shooting and push it all the way down to use a special attack. And it is pretty darn cool. I mean, coming from the Xbox controller, which is a good controller, no doubt, but I think has some pretty mid triggers. Apparently there are analog, but they don't feel great to use. They just feel okay. Sony's triggers feel terrific. So yeah, I think the PS5 controller is maybe the best one I've ever used. And it's also nice how easy it is to pair it with other systems. Sony recently released an update for the controller where you can have it paired to multiple devices and then you can press a button assigned to that device on the controller to put it in the mode to pair with that specific device. And that is really cool. It makes it a lot easier to connect it to a computer or a phone if you want to do some emulation or some mobile gaming of some sort, or if you want to use a feature like PS Remote Play, which I do often use. I connect to my tablet and I go on the treadmill and play some sort of low intensity game like an MLB The Show or something with my PS5 controller and with PS Remote Play, which I think is a pretty cool feature. It allows you to stream your games from your console to a mobile device or computer. Now, of course, Microsoft also has that feature, and it's one I used quite extensively when I had my Series X. But regardless, it's a really cool feature. It deserves to be shouted out in a video like this. So in total, I don't have any problems with the hardware. For full transparency, I have the PS5 Slim, not the PS5 with the disk drive, not the PS5 Pro. I have the cheapest PS5 Slim option, and I have absolutely no issues with it. So in terms of the hardware, I think it is a slam dunk. I don't know. I really like it. I don't have much to say in that regard. Now let's talk about PlayStation Plus, because I think if you are deciding between a PlayStation and Xbox, this is one thing you're going to think a lot about. Do I want an Xbox because of Game Pass, or are the trade-offs between Game Pass and PS Plus enough to make me want to get a PlayStation? And ultimately, I can't make that decision for you. It is a financial one, it is a preference one, but I can tell you a little bit about PS Plus. There are 3 tiers to PS Plus. You've got Essential, which is $80 a year. It gives you the online service and the free monthly games, as well as cloud storage, which I still think it's crazy the companies charge you for cloud storage, but whatever. For the record, I do think all of the big 3 charge you for cloud storage now, which is kind of crazy in my opinion. For $135 a year, or $55 more than Essential, you get PS Plus Extra, which is just PS Plus Essential, but with the game catalog. And then you have the highest tier, PS Premium, which is $160 a year, or $25 more than PS Plus Extra, and that comes with all of the stuff on PS Plus Extra, but also the Classics catalog, cloud streaming, and game trials. So let's go through all of those features. First, online service. The thing about PS Plus is you're probably going to at least buy the Essential tier, because most people these days play online. It's like a necessity, and PlayStation, Microsoft, and Nintendo know that, and that's why they charge for it. So I think for a lot of people, it isn't a decision between, am I going to pay for this or not? It's, am I going to pay $80 a year, $135 a year, or $160 a year? The monthly games are a nice bonus. I feel like the selection can be pretty hit or miss, and that's of course because they just give you the games for free, right? They aren't on a service, they don't go away at a certain time. If you add them in the month they're offered, you just have them forever. So you can understand why the selection wouldn't be as good as, say, the game catalog. There have been some pretty cool games recently, though. This month, Psychonauts 2 was available to add to your library. Bomb Rush Cyberpunk was available a few months ago, right before I subscribed, of course. And then I think in August, Lies of P was available for the service, which is one of the most beloved, Souls-like games in the last few years. But if you look at the entire list of every single monthly game on PS Plus, it's not the prettiest list in the world, and there's a lot of games that will be cool to some people, but are ultimately very specific, and a lot of people are going to see the list of games and the 3 games they offer every month and say, that's not really for me. I will say it's better than Games with Gold. If anyone remembers Games with Gold back in the day, where Xbox would give you 3 games a month if you subscribed to their online service, they later realized that they wanted to go down the Game Pass route and stop doing this. But the best thing I remember getting from Games with Gold is like Celeste, which is a great game, don't get me wrong, but I had already bought it on Nintendo Switch, so that wasn't even very good in its own right. Psychonauts 2, meanwhile, is a terrific game, a $60 3D platformer. Lies of P is a huge Souls-like game, and Bomb Rush Cyberpunk is $40, and that's one of the most beloved games of the last few years and has such a cool art style, such a cool aesthetic. So, it's not all duds, but I mean, I have my PS5 on because of my fiasco earlier. I can tell you the games I have in my library from that. Jusant, which I've heard good things about, to be fair. DayZ. My Hero 1's just... What is going on with my clock? What the hell? Why did it... That was crazy. It stopped the second I looked over at it. That is some freaky stuff right there. Oh my gosh. This video is going off the rails. My Hero 1's Justice. I'm going to keep it on. I got to keep an eye on you. God damn. My Hero 1's Justice 2, which is a fighting game. Lies of P, I do have that in my... Oh, no, I have it. Psychonauts 2, Viewfinder, which I've heard good things about, and then Stardew Valley is in my library. But the point is, there are some pretty cool games. I mean, I always add them because why not? You know, it doesn't cost you any more to add them. You're already paying for the service. So it's a cool thing. You're probably going to pay $80 to get online, especially if you're buying this console for GTA 6. You're probably going to want to play GTA Online. You're going to have to pay the $80. But should you pay the extra money for Extra or Premium? Let's talk about that. Game Catalog is the additional feature for PS Plus Extra, and I do think it's a pretty darn good deal. If you are someone who's had a PlayStation for a while, who has been a part of the PlayStation ecosystem your whole life, you're probably not going to think that a lot of the games on PS Plus Extra are worth it just because you've probably already played them. But if you're new to PlayStation entirely, or even just new to the PS5, there are some pretty cool things on here. And I will echo that. It's doing it again. What the hell? What is happening? Am I being haunted right now? I'm going to hammer that point home that I said before. I'm going to hammer... Oh yeah, it's just the light doing weird stuff. Boy, that really freaked me out. Whew, my goodness. Got a little bit of an analog horror side plot to that. No, it is not the light doing that. Are you serious? Boy, I don't even... This segment has gone so off the rails. If you... Okay. I'm going to unplug it. It's plugged in like all the way over there. I'm not going to unplug it. I turned it around. Can't get the best of me, clock. Anyway, if you are new to the PS ecosystem and you have not played a lot of PlayStation games in your life, there's a really good selection here for you. I'm going to read to you some of the PlayStation Studios games on PS Plus. Bloodborne, Days Gone, Death Stranding, Ghost of Tsushima, Detroit Become Human, Demon's Souls, God of War 2018, and God of War Ragnarok, as well as God of War 3 Remastered, Gravity Rush 1 and 2, Marvel's Spider-Man, Spider-Man Miles Morales, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Returnal, Sackboy A Big Adventure, if you want to count that, Shadow of the Colossus, The Last of Us Part 1, all 4 of the Uncharted games, as well as the Lost Legacy expansion, and then Until Dawn as well. That's a pretty darn good selection if you're new to the PS Plus ecosystem. And that's without mentioning the hundreds of games on the game catalog. There's games like Cyberpunk 2077, Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, Blueprints, which was a huge hit this year, Mortal Kombat 1, the Wolfenstein games are on here. Sword of the Sea dropped into PS Plus on day one. That game is terrific. I love that game. Same thing with the Rogue Prince of Persia. Unicorn Overlord dropped recently onto PS Plus. That's a really cool Fire Emblem-inspired strategy RPG. There's a lot of cool indie games like Celeste and Citizen Sleeper. I could go on, but the point is, PS Plus's game catalog, I think, is pretty darn good, especially if you haven't played a lot of these Sony games. If that's you, this service is 100% worth the $55 a year. I've easily gotten my $55 worth already. I probably got in my $135 worth already just by playing some of these games. But if you are a big Sony fan and have played a lot of these games, first of all, thank you for watching this video, because I don't think you need to watch it, but I appreciate you being here. You're probably not going to see as much value in this service, but even still, I think there's a lot of darn cool stuff offered up here. Now, the question then becomes, should you pay the extra $25 and upgrade to PS Plus Premium? Probably not. I think the Classics catalog is really cool. There's a lot of awesome games in there. I have the Sony Computer Entertainment games in a folder somewhere. Yes, I did pay the extra $25. Here are some of the Sony Computer Entertainment classics that are on here. There's some of the Ape Escape games, a lot of the Jak and Daxter games, God of War 3 Remastered, which I mentioned earlier, Beyond Two Souls, Infamous First Light. I don't think people like Infamous First Light, but I think they do like Beyond Two Souls, some of the old Loco Roco and Patapon games, a few of the Sly Cooper games, some of the Ratchet and Clank games, not too many though. Riven and Myst are on here, some Siphon Filters, some Twisted Metals, The Last of Us Remastered and its DLC, Siren, some pretty cool classic games. A lot of the really cool classic games are the ones on PS3, but you can only play those through game streaming. Those games include a lot of the old God of War games, Ico, Infamous, basically every Ratchet & Clank games, some of the Sly Cooper games. These are games that would be awesome to have natively in the Classics catalog, but you can only play them through game streaming. And from what I've tried of game streaming for these classic games, it's not too bad. It's obviously very compressed. The input delay is noticeable at times, though it's not as bad as I expected. But it's obviously not the ideal way to play these games. Especially a third-person action game like God of War or Infamous, I doubt it is the most satisfying experience playing one of those games non-natively. But I guess I do respect them for adding this whatsoever. I know the PS3 architecture is very unique and very hard to emulate. Even online emulators struggle with it to this day. I would hope that they are working on some sort of PS3 emulator internally to have at some point on PS Plus, though the fact that we haven't gotten it at this point and they're really going in on that streaming thing makes me a little bit pessimistic as to the chances we have of getting native PS3 games in the Classics catalog one day. But the cool thing is, because all these games can only be streamed, there are some really weird PS3 games on here, like Injustice Gods Among Us, the Batman Lego games, Phineas and Ferb Across the Second Dimension, Disney's G-Force the video game. Point is, if you appreciate the PS3 generation and you can deal with some less than stellar streaming quality, it is a cool thing on offer, and it is worth noting that the PS2 and PS1 games on the Classics catalog are there natively. So again, games like We Love Katamari Reroll plus Royal Reverie, GTA 3, Indiana Jones and the Staff of Kings, some of the Sly games and the Jack games, Mr. Mosquito and Time Splitters, some of the Ape Escape games, Resident Evil 2 and 3, some Twisted Metal and some Armor Core and Dino Crisis. These games all run natively, so there are still a lot of cool old retro games on offer that you can download and play on your PlayStation 5. But admittedly, this is a very niche offering, even more so than the monthly games or the games catalog. If you think you're interested in this, look up the list of games and see if it really is something that interests you. If you think you're interested in the game catalog, you probably will be, because there are a lot of cool games in there, including genuinely some of the greatest games of all time. And if there's something in there for you, or a few things in there for you, I think it's worth the $25. But if there's nothing interesting to you, hold off and see what Sony does each month adding to the Classics catalog. Check out that State of Play next week, see what new announcements they make, and if there is something that tickles your fancy, then I would say upgrade at that time. But if you're sitting here wondering what level of PS Plus should I upgrade to, because you're probably going to get the $80 one anyway, I would say it is worth $55 more a year to upgrade to the PS Plus Extra tier and get that game catalog. Because again, some of the greatest games of all time are contained within that game catalog. And even if you're not interested in, somehow, Ghost of Tsushima and Last of Us and Cyberpunk and Spider-Man and all of these incredible games, the 2 new God of War games as well, there's probably some sort of hidden gem on there that you're really going to like. Sword of the Sea, again, is one I wholeheartedly recommend. I love that game. So pretty, so zen, so awesome. So that's my PS Plus diatribe. I think it's better than people give it credit for. Again, you're probably going to buy it anyway just to get online. And at that point, I do think the extra $55, which is the cost of a game these days, I think that is worth the upgrade. And again, you do get some day one games like you do on Game Pass. Sword of the Sea, Blueprints, The Rogue Prince of Persia were all games that dropped into PS Plus on day one. Obviously, it's not going to be as extensive as Game Pass, but there's a reason Game Pass is $100 more a year. Let's now get into the most hotly debated aspect of the PS5, and that is the games. Does the PS5 have games? A lot of people would tell you no, and for a while they were right, because Sony was really big in on this cross-generation plan, where a lot of their big hitters in the first few years of the PS5 also came to the PS4. I mean, a year like 2022 could have been legendary for the PS5. It had Gran Turismo 7, God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West. But all of those games also came to the PS4, so PS5 fans were left a little bit disappointed. Obviously, the cross-generational thing is over at this point for Sony. All of the games Sony's releasing are PS5 only, and then they come to PC down the line. But that 2-year-ish gap did immeasurable damage to the PS5's PR, to the point where nowadays people still say the PS5 doesn't have any games, or only has one game, that being Astro Bot. But the PS5 does have a lot of cool games, I think. Let's run down a list of PlayStation 5 exclusives, and I'll let you make that decision for yourself. So I have in front of me a list of the 22 games that you can only play on the PS5 or PC, but I'm not really counting that. That's a separate issue. These are games published by Sony that you cannot play on the PS4. Now, keep in mind that some of these games are remasters, and we'll get to that in a second, but here's the list. Spider-Man Remastered, Demon's Souls, Astro's Playroom, Destruction All-Stars, Returnal, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection, The Last of Us Part 1, Spider-Man 2, The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, Helldivers 2, Rise of the Ronin, Stellar Blade, Astro Bot, Until Dawn, Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered, Days Gone Remastered, Death Stranding 2, Lost Soul Aside, Ghost of Yotei, Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls, and Saros. Obviously, those last 3 games are not out yet, but those are the 22 games that are exclusive to the PS5 that are either out or have a defined date. Now, 8 of those games, of course, are remasters or remakes. Spider-Man Remastered, Demon's Souls, Uncharted, Last of Us Part 1, Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, Until Dawn Remastered, Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered, Days Gone Remastered. Demon's Souls and Until Dawn are remakes. There's a lot more that went into those than the remastered games, which are available, I believe, for a $10 upgrade if you have the original game. But the question is, regardless, is that enough? Is that worth it in terms of a PS5 library? And I would say this: no. I don't think the PS5 has a terrific exclusives library. Games like Returnal and Ratchet & Clank and Spider-Man 2 and Astro Bot and Death Stranding 2 and upcoming Ghost of Yotei and Tokon and Saros are all really cool games, but there's not that many of them, right? Compared to the PS4 generation, which got so many great games exclusive to it, and technically not exclusive because some of them were also on PS5, very complicated. But the PS4 and even the PS3 before it had some pretty darn legendary rosters of exclusive games, and the PS5, in comparison, is not very strong. But the question with the PS5, if you're buying it now, I think, is not, is the library good right now? It's, is the library going to be good in the next 2 years? And I think that question has a different answer. Because again, Ghost of Yotei comes out in a few weeks. Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls and Saros both come out next year, and I think they will both be out by the summer. We know that Tokon has to come out before EVO, you would think, and given that we are likely to see Saros gameplay at the next State of Play, I think that game could slot into the first quarter like Returnal did back in 2021. And theoretically, there should be more in the pipeline. We've heard rumors that Wolverine, the next game from Insomniac, is going to come out next year. Obviously, Intergalactic, the next Naughty Dog game, was announced at the Game Awards last year, and some people think that's coming out in 2026. I'm not one of them, but, you know, there's, I guess, some optimism there. And regardless, I do think it's going to come out before the PS6 does, if that makes any sense. We've heard rumors of Insomniac also working on Spider-Man 3 and Venom in addition to Wolverine, though those games, for all we know, could be PS6 games as well. And Guerrilla, the creators of Horizon, are also a studio that's come up recently, because not only is Horizon 3 probably in the works to come out by the end of this decade, you would think, but also they've been rumored to work on a live service game that miraculously has not gotten canceled with all of the cancellations of live service games around it. Sony Santa Monica is a studio that's also been in rumors recently because there are some whispers of a new 2D Metroidvania God of War likely to come out next year, and there's been a lot of rumors around the next God of War game, which feels like it's going to get revealed pretty soon. But all of those rumors combined could make for a pretty good next few years of the PlayStation, if you believe that Wolverine and Intergalactic and maybe the next Santa Monica game and the 2D Metroidvania God of War are all going to come out by 2027. It's a pretty good next 2 years for Sony. And if a game like Horizon 3 comes out in, say, 2028 for the PS6, history tells us that Sony's probably also going to make a PS5 version for it. So if you buy the PS5 now, you're probably getting a good few years of support before Sony inevitably cuts off the cord and only supports PS6. But I'd be pretty shocked at this point if it's a hard cut. If the PS6 comes out in 2027, I don't think PS5 games are going to stop coming out in 2027 from Sony. Again, we'll see. We'll probably get that thing revealed next year. I feel like the PS5 is going to have support for at least the next 3 years, if not longer. So the question then remains, is the PS5's library good enough? I think it depends. Obviously, it depends on your preference. Do these games I just listed seem interesting to you? If yes, then yeah, it's probably worth it. It's probably worth picking up one and trying out games like Death Stranding 2 and Ghost of Yotei when it comes out next year and all of that other stuff. And that point is especially true if you haven't played a lot of PlayStation games, because a lot of the remastered games I listed here are very good games in their own right and often go on sale at pretty discounted prices on the PlayStation Store. And I will say this, as someone who owned a Series X for the entire generation until recently, Sony's output this gen has been a lot better than Microsoft's. They've picked up the steam in the last few years, but the first few years of Microsoft's output was pretty pathetic. I remember being excited for Halo to come out with the console, and then it got delayed until the end of 2021, and then when it came out, it wasn't even that good. Really, it wasn't until Indiana Jones in 2024 where I said, yeah, this is why I bought an Xbox. And of course, that game came to PlayStation a few months later. All of that is to say, it can get worse, and I think Sony's output comparatively is pretty good. Now, at this point, Xbox is firing on all cylinders. 2025 is going to be a terrific year for them. You know, other stuff aside, just focusing on the games, 2025 is going to be a great year for them. They've had a game every month practically, and 2026 is going to have games like Forza and Fable and Halo and Gears. But again, it seems like Sony is starting to figure it out and starting to get out of the live service malaise that they were in for so much of this PS5 generation. So I think it's cool to see both of the console publishers seemingly getting out of the rut they were early in the generation during COVID, and really delivering some bangers. And I think Sony's output in 2026 and 2027 is only going to get better, and that's exciting. So for me, yeah, I do think the lineup is pretty good and exciting looking ahead into the future, but obviously that's not going to be the case for everybody. And again, all of these games that got remastered are games that I've never played. So Horizon was just on sale for like $20 on the PlayStation Store, and I picked it up, and I'll definitely try it out soon. Like, I'm excited to try that game, even if I've heard some mixed things from people who I trust. So ultimately, those are what I think are the three biggest pillars of the PlayStation 5 in terms of discussion points for if you should get this console. But the main question remains, should you get a PS5 in 2025? Is the PS5, 5 years after its release, worth it? I think so. That is if you can get it at an affordable price, given that it just recently had its prices raised. But me personally, I got the PS5 Slim off of Amazon at a really deep discount. For some reason, they were doing a really big sale, and I was able to pick it up. So if you can find it for like $400, I think it's certainly worth it. But I'm looking on Amazon right now. The PS5 Slim is $500. The PS5 console with Fortnite bundled in. Why would you bundle in Fortnite with a console? Whatever. That's $600. And for the record, the MSRP for the PS5 consoles after those recent price increases from Sony are $550 for the PS5, $500 straight up for the PS5 Digital Edition, and $750 for the PS5 Pro. But at those prices, obviously it's a little harder to recommend, especially because you are going to pay at least $80 to get online services. And like I said, I think it's worth it to pay the extra $55 to get all of these different games. But at that point, a PS5 base model is $700, which is a lot to swallow. And by the way, if the choice for me was buying a PS5 outright, I would not have done it. I only bought a PS5 because I sold my Series X and was able to recoup the value for it on eBay to pay for my PS5. I did not have $500 lying around to pick up this console. It was more of a swap than anything. But ultimately, if you are lucky enough to be of the financial stature to where you can buy this game because you want to play GTA 6 or whatever, I think it is worth it. I think it's got a good game library. I think PS Plus is much improved from a few years ago. And again, I think the console itself and the tech is really fun to play around with. And if you're one of those people who are ready to upgrade because of GTA 6 and don't know where to go in terms of Series X or PS5, I would tell you that I've played more, let's say 8 out of 10 games on my PS5 in these last few months than I had in the entire generation of the Series X. Because while I adore games like Psychonauts 2 and Indiana Jones and The Great Circle, those games were few and far between. Not to say that PS5 has a better time with that, but the fact that you're jumping in so late into the generation means that you can fill up that backlog pretty quickly with a lot of great games. And I can't really say the same about Microsoft. Again, I think there's an argument that in 2 years, the Xbox's library could be better than the PlayStation's, but right now I would take the PS5's library over the Series X's, and I don't think it's really that close. But ultimately, the decision is yours. So tell me in the comments, have you picked up a PS5 already and are just watching this video to hear my thoughts? Or are you really deciding between a PS5 or an Xbox Series X or a Switch 2 or just a PS5 or nothing at all? Tell me in the comments what you're leaning towards, and in general, your thoughts on the PS5 5 years in. Is it finally worth it? If you had the PS5 from the start of the generation, let me know if you feel satisfied with it 5 years in. And again, if you have any questions for me as a new PS5 user, please drop them in the comments and I'll try to respond to them and help you out. With that said, make sure to like the video, hit subscribe, hit that big, fat button. There's a lot going on the channel. Like I said earlier, I got a lot of Mario stuff in the pipeline, excited to release that. A lot of exciting Mario topics to get to these last few months. So if you don't want to miss any of that, make sure to subscribe and hit that freaking bell. And again, address me in the comments. Say anything you want. You know, questions, comments, concerns, thoughts on the PlayStation 5, thoughts on things that aren't related to the PlayStation 5. We'll take it all down there because it's a freaking party in the comments and you don't want to miss any of it. That's a weird thing to say about the comments section, but it's true. It's a freaking party down there. This video has gone off the rails. I'm going a bit insane, so I think it's time to say goodbye. So with all that said, I'll see you guys in the next one.